They are, I speak now particularly of my own city of Derry, they're watching our growing numbers. They are watching to see in what ways they can restrict us. And there's this constant and very hard to describe atmosphere of watchfulness, this
Yes.
sort of business where you must know what the other fella is before you can condition what your attitude is going to be to him.
I have been thinking about multi-ethnic states. I have come to the conclusion that they are immoral, because they are always a prelude to a civil war, or equivalent. Consider a multi-ethnic state in which there is a majority group and a minority group. It is only a matter of time before the majority turns on the minority. Consider group interest. A person has an individual interest based on their circumstances. A group of people with similar circumstances have similar interests, a group interest. The interest can emerge from the members of the group, or it can be imposed on them. For example, if the powers that be offer to benefit one group, then that group has an interest in receiving those benefits. If the benefit comes at the expense of other groups, those other groups have an interest in not letting the benefit proceed. The group interest is imposed. Furthermore, a group cares about other groups in proportion to the likelihood that members of the group can be members of another group. For example, the poor want to tax the rich. They do not care about the rich because they are not the rich. They will not pay the taxes. However, they cannot go too hard on the rich in case they ever end up rich, or in case their children do. The poor will go much harder on the 1% because they are much less likely to ever be in the 1%. If the other group is a different ethnicity or race, there is basically no chance that members of the first group will ever be in the second, so there is no limit to how hard they are willing to hit the other group. Therefore, in our multi-ethnic state, the members of each ethnic group have their ethnicity as a shared circumstance. Therefore, it is possible for a government to impose a group interest on the groups simply because the groups exist. The groups will not object to outright persecution of each other because there is no chance that a person can change their ethnicity. Therefore, it is only a matter of time before a majority group turns on a minority group. It might not happen when times are good, but eventually a crisis will occur. Resources will be short, and maybe the majority group will be happier if they could have the minority group's stuff. They will take either by changing the laws to let them take, or by sending in troops to take, or by mobs of people taking. Resistance will be crushed. Alternatively, the minority group will anticipate that the majority will attack them, so they will preempt the attack. They will attack the majority's capacity to attack them. They can do this despite their small numbers, by attacking the majority group's leadership. By leadership, I mean the class of people who can coordinate society. Think of a protest march of 50,000 people. How many people organized it? Not 50,000, maybe not even 500. If you can get the 500, you avoid the 50,000. The minority group tries to take out the 500. They might try to take over the education system so that the would-be 500 are educated out of it. Maybe the 500 is reduced to 300. Taking over communications and media would prevent the 300 from communicating with each other. Maybe the 300 becomes 200 plus 100 scattered people. Taking over politics and law can outlaw the 500 and their ideas. Maybe the 200 becomes 50 plus 50 jailed plus 100 too afraid to stand up. Attacking the history of the majority sets the impression that the majority could not exist without the minority, and that puts more leaders off from standing up. Maybe the 50 becomes 30. Attacking the culture, art, architecture, literature, social norms, to make them ugly and disgusting, will make the 30 not want to protect them. The 30 becomes 10. The leadership is reduced by over 99%. The strength of the majority is reduced by over 99%, so they can be dominated by a minority of less than 2%. Meanwhile, the minority group will try to boost its numbers so that it is not 2%, but 10%, 15%, 30% of the population. There is safety in numbers. However, this means dominating the majority even more. Now, the same disaster that was due to meet the minority group will meet the majority group unless it reacts, which it surely will. If the majority is overwhelming and strong, then it takes a big crisis to make you consider taking from a small minority. When the majority is still big and strong, it is confident that it can always turn things around whenever it wants, so there is no panic. As the majority starts to approach 50% of the population, it realizes that soon it will be in the minority, and the future recipient of disaster. If it does not make a move now, it will never get the chance again. It must fight back. The growing minority also knows this, and must make sure that the fight back whenever it comes fails. It ramps up its attacks. Subtlety is not important. It is all about doing damage before the fight back begins, like an artillery barrage before an assault. This barrage only advertises to the majority what it can expect once it is in the minority, and makes it even more urgent that they fight back now, before it gets any weaker. Thus a majority will eventually turn on a minority, or a minority will turn on a majority, and the majority will fight back. This seems to be the pattern of history and the reason why multi-ethnic states are not as common or as long-lasting as homogeneous ones. Therefore, to have a multi-ethnic state is to have the disaster that follows, just as to pull the pin on a grenade is to have the explosion that follows. If the explosion is bad, then why should pulling the pin be good? Therefore, I consider multi-ethnic states to be immoral.